everybody, welcome to Stamping with Melva. My name's Melva Peters and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in British Columbia, Canada. And it's Saturday, and normally I am on about an hour from now on Saturdays, but because I'm in a training session all day today, actually, I'm jumping on a little early, so hopefully I'm going to get some people joining me, and if not, they'll watch it on the replay. Hopefully my sound is working today. I've been having some issues with sound, so I'm going to assume that it's working and that you can hear. And what I'm going to do today is I want to show you how to create a really pretty ombre background using 3 different colors. And I'm going to use the Butterfly Brilliance stamp as a kind of overall background stamp. I love this stamp. It's just so pretty with the butterflies. And I'm going to do some embossing with black embossing powder. All right, let's switch over. Oh, thanks, Nancy. I'm glad it's working. Morning, Lee. All right, I'm going to switch over. So this is the Butterfly Brilliance. This is a stamp set that came out, I think, last year in the annual catalog, and it was carried over. It's just so pretty with all the different butterflies. And of course, there are dies that you can cut all these individual butterflies out. Actually, it's one big die that cuts all 6 butterflies out. But I like to use this as a background stamp. It's just so easy. You can stamp it in tuxedo black memento and color them all, or you can do what I'm going to do, and that I'm going to stamp it in Versamark and then emboss. All sorts of ways that you can use this. Okay. So I have got some pieces already cut. So I'm in the purple tones. I love purple. So this is fresh freesia, and it's cut 4 1/4 by 11. And then I've got a piece of Orchid Oasis. Isn't that a pretty color combination? Don't you? I have to show you my nails. I had them done yesterday, and they match all of the in colors. Yeah, Nancy. So we actually did some blending. She blended until she got the one that matches Orchid Oasis. I thought she did a really good job. Anyway, it's kind of fun. Okay, so this second layer is Orchid Oasis, and it's 4 inches by 5 1/4. And then I've got a piece of, this is the inside, shimmery white cardstock, and I've cut this the piece. It's already underneath my my Stamparatus. It's 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. To think about this, it's just a 1/8 inch smaller than this layer. It's going to have a peekaboo of the Orchid Oasis. All right, so when I use a background stamp, I like to use my Stamparatus just because I find it really hard to control the really big block that this fits on. And so the Stamparatus is a great tool to use when you're going to be using a background stamp. It allows you to ink it up evenly and consistently. So I'm going to ink this up, use Versamark. Just make sure I get it all covered with Versamark. Now, I'm going to take my magnet off just because my stamp is too big. Oops. Kind of got it lined up using the grid lines. So we're going to put it up on the grid lines. And then I'm just going to press down all over. And if you've got I've got a jar that I made with a felt pad on top of it, and it works really well to kind of apply pressure evenly all over when you're using your Stamparatus. Sometimes you'll find that you just don't, with the palm of your hand, sometimes don't get the pressure you need. All right, so lift it up, and I knew that was going to be happening since I wasn't using my magnet. All right, so now I have got my black embossing powder in my plastic container, and I don't have a spoon for this one, but we will just kind of apply it and hope I don't get black embossing powder all over the place like I tend to get embossing powder. There we go. Oops. I really like the strong background of the black embossing. All right. Now, we go. Not too bad. You can take a paintbrush if you've got it and just kind of, let me get my paintbrush out of my stand here. There we go. And just kind of remove some of the extra bits of, let's put this out of the way, the extra little bits. And I've just wiped off some of my, there we go. Ah, that is the downside when you've got a whole sheet of embossing powder. Hey, I'm just dropping this all over today. All right, and then I spilled. See what happens when I do embossing powder? I am just the world's, I make such a mess. That's why I need to find a plastic spoon to put in there. Oh, I'll clean this off. There we go. There we go. Gosh. Can you imagine how messy it would be if I didn't have it in a plastic container? Gosh. All right, so let's take this, bring this back in, and now let's bring the heat tool in. And I'm going to find my, take your pick. Yeah, I know, Becky. It's crazy. I just am terrible with embossing powder, but I love using it. It's just such a fun technique. And it's one of the first techniques I actually learned to do when I started to stamp. No heat tool. We used to use an old electric frying pan to melt. Now, I think I've said this before when I've done heat embossing. The trick is to hold your heat tool in one spot until you start to see the embossing powder go from the dull matte finish to a shiny finish. And I'm having a bit of a hard time seeing with the black, but I'm just going to kind of, once you start to see it go to that shiny finish, you can start moving your heat tool around. And then you can kind of hold it up and see that you've got it all melted, baked. You don't want it half baked. There we go. I can start to see it. I'm just not sure I got all the bits at the top done. So once I've kind of got what I think is done, then I'll pick it up and have a look in the light. There we go. All right. I'm just gonna see. Try not to get my fingers in it. To see if there are any spots that don't look like they're done. This piece here may not be. There we go. I think that's all done. What you don't want to do is continue heating it, because the embossing powder will start to soak into the paper, and that's not what you want. But you do want to make sure. Yeah, it's not. I've missed some spots. I don't know. This black is kind of hard to see. At least for me today. There we go. Sometimes feeling it is the only way you can actually make sure you've got everything, but then you run the risk of wiping off some of the powder that hasn't been melted on. Okay, there we go. I think I'm done now. All right, I'm just going to let that cool just slightly, so that because if I start to rub this on now with the ink, it will potentially smudge if it hasn't kind of set. Now, these are the colors I'm using: Fresh Freesia, Highland Heather, and Orchid Oasis to create my ombre effect. So while that's cooling, I'm just going to open up my ink pads. And what I do, I'm going to move my Stamparatus out of the way. What I do is I leave the lids open so that I can tap off. So I'm going to start with my lightest color, and I'm going to start at the top and go down. So I'm going to pick up some of the fresh freesia and start off of your paper and start laying down your color. So we're going to go from top to bottom, light to dark, like that. Now, if you made your paper, and I didn't, I probably should have, and I might actually trim it down. Make your paper a little bit bigger than you end up your final piece. You can actually then trim it down. Okay, this is my Highland Heather. Trim it down so that it you can trim off some of the pieces that, you know, maybe have smudged on the edges, or where you're getting a little bit darker on the edge. Sometimes if you don't start off the edge, you can get it a little bit darker on the edge. All right, getting there. So I don't know if you can see, so I've kind of got the lighter pink from the fresh freesia, and now the Highland Heather. And now we'll pick up some of the Orchid Oasis, which is hopefully enough difference from the Highland Heather. They're all very slightly different shades of purple. This is more blue. It's almost like a periwinkle blue. And if I just kind of, you can apply as much or as little, and just kind of get the colors as you want them. I'm just kind of blending. There we go. I think that's, hopefully you can see, oops, the ombre effect from the light to dark over top of the black. Now I am going to take and trim my piece down just slightly. So I want this to be actually 3 3/4 by 5. So I'm going to just take and trim this edge off. So if you make it a little bit bigger than what you really want it, you can, you know, take and trim it down. Now I'm going to take an 1/8 of an inch off the top and an 1/8 of an inch off the bottom here, just to kind of make it even. Oops, wrong one. That one. There we go. Okay, so there's my background piece. So it really is kind of a pretty easy way to create a pretty background for your card. Now, I know the butterflies are so pretty, and I'm going to use Stampin' Seal. My piece, sometimes when you use a heat tool, your piece of cardstock will, the corners will curl slightly, and I just find I can get closer to the edge with the Stampin' Seal. Here we go. And now I want to bring in my paper trimmer and score this. So my piece is 4 1/4 by 11. So we're going to score it at 5 1/2. If you've got a piece that's 5 1/2 by 8 1/2, you would score it at 4 1/4. And if I grab my bone folder. So as always, fold into the mountain or the raised line, the raised score line. So just get that nice crisp crease. Now I somewhere grabbed, this is the fresh freesia open weave ribbon. So I thought what I would do is tie a nice bow. So let's see if I can tie a bow. So I'm tying it before I actually trim it. Get it kind of the size I roughly wanted it, tie it tight. And then if I can, there we go. So now I'm going to wrap it around the back. So, and then I will hold it down using a glue dot. So this just allows me to kind of get my bow where I want it and then wrap it around the back. You can do a faux bow as well. So let's bring in, I'm going to want it kind of roughly down there. Oops. Come on. Over a little bit. There we go. All right. Like that around the back. And then you can trim this. A little bit extra there. Okay. I will put a glue dot in behind that, and now we can take some Stampin' Seal. Again, I often use Stampin' Seal when I've got glue on the, or a ribbon that I've wrapped around. I just find that I can kind of put some more adhesive over top of the ribbon, and it holds it in place a little bit better. Sometimes when you wrapped your ribbon around the back of your card base, it will kind of come loose after time. And I'm just going to take a glue dot, and we're going to kind of put it underneath this bow so that the bow is kind of kept in where I want it to be. Now I went ahead and stamped. This thank you stamp is from the Charming Sentiment stamp set, and it coordinates with this great set of dies. So there are dies to cut out all of these, as well as a whole bunch of other, if I can get this out, it's a little tight. So these dies all coordinate with these sentiments. And then there's all sorts of other dies, like a candle and some hearts and butterflies and stars, so that you can add these to your cards as well. So I've gone ahead and stamped my sentiment on my shimmery white cardstock using Tuxedo Black, and I cut a piece of the Orchid Oasis cardstock out of the same die, and I'm going to cut that in half. And now you can, where's my liquid glue? You can take and adhere these kind of the half pieces to each side of your sentiment piece. So let's use this so I don't get glue all over my, so you get, it looks like you've got a matte layer in behind your sentiment. You can do this either way. I could have cut it in half the long way, or I couldn't. This one I've cut in half this way. Oops, that shifted a little bit. Let's kind of get that back in place. There we go. And now it just looks like I've got a matte layer behind my sentiment piece. I don't know if you can see that. Just so that it adds a little bit of color to the sentiment. And we're just going to pop that sentiment up on, I use my black in dimensionals because they're handy. I've said this before, we do have black dimensionals. They come in a combo package of the big ones and the little ones. So it's a great way if you've got darker cardstock. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is, because my sentiment is kind of free floating on the ribbon, I'm going to take and put a glue dot under my ribbon so that the sentiment doesn't cause that ribbon kind of to float around and move around. There we go. That just holds it in place. Okay, let's see. I have a piece of shimmery white cardstock, and I have some of these are the matte decorative dots in the In Colors. Match my nails. If you haven't figured out, I love these. I've used so many of them, but I'm just going to take and put, they come in 5 shades. They come in each of the 5 In Colors, and then 5 different shades, kind of ombre effect. For each, so they're really nice to use, and you can get, you know, just a bit of a different color in each of them. Okay, so there we go. Now I don't have anything to stamp on here, but we'll adhere this down. That way my inside of my card is all finished, and I can figure out what I want to write on the inside of it when I go to send it to someone. These often turn into customer thank you cards when I do a lot of thank you cards, and so I often just write a note and say, thank you very much for your order. Hope you enjoy your amazing products. So there we go. So you can see the ombre effect from kind of light to a different purple to the Orchid Oasis. Really easy effect to do using your blending brushes. So I hope you try that. hopefully you won't have the same issue with your embossing powder as I did. But yeah, one of these days I will figure out how. I've figured out I've mastered liquid glue, so I think I can master not getting embossing powder all over the place. Let's hope so. All right, thanks so much for joining me. Now tomorrow I'm usually live at 12 noon. I will be live probably about 10:30 tomorrow morning. We're going out for lunch, and so I'm going to go live a little bit early. So watch for me at 10:30 Pacific, and I'll be live with another technique for you. All right, everybody. Hope you have a great day. Happy stamping. Bye.